Right now, somewhere, someone is planning a funeral.
Flowers.
A few words.
A box lowered into the ground. You can picture it perfectly. Because we have done it the same way for so long that it feels like instinct.
But it isn't. For most of life on Earth, the dead are simply left where they fall.
Then, somewhere in the dark of the Ice Age, a human knelt over a body that used to be someone they loved and refused to walk away.
That single choice might be the moment we became human.
And the oldest graves on Earth are far stranger than you'd think.
Because for most of life on Earth, death is simple. An animal dies and the world moves on. The herd keeps walking.
The body is left where it falls.
For millions of years, that was true for our ancestors too. Death was just an ending, and the living had no time to linger. So the real question isn't how ancient humans died.
It's stranger than that. At some point, our ancestors started to treat the dead as if they still mattered. And nobody is completely sure why.
Let's go back to the oldest clues. For a long time, we assumed that careful burial was something only our species did. That it was part of what made us special. But the evidence says otherwise. The Neanderthals, our cousins, were burying their dead long before some people think they were even capable of it.
In caves across Europe and the Middle East, archaeologists have found Neanderthal bodies that were not simply abandoned.
They were placed.
Curled on their sides, in deliberate positions, in pits that appear to have been dug on purpose.
These were not random deaths in random spots.
Someone arranged them. And one of those caves has become one of the most famous and most argued about sites in all of archaeology.
It's called Shanidar in the mountains of northern Iraq.
Decades ago, a researcher named Ralph Selecki found a Neanderthal man buried there.
And when they analyzed the soil around him, they found something astonishing. Clumps of ancient pollen.
From flowers?
The story spread around the world. A Neanderthal, tens of thousands of years ago, laid to rest on a bed of wildflowers by people who grieved him. It changed how the world saw Neanderthals overnight, from brutish cavemen to beings who mourned.
But here is where you have to be honest, because real science is.
Other scientists pushed back. They pointed out that the pollen could have been carried into the grave by burrowing rodents, who are known to stash flowers in their nests. To this day, the flower burial is debated. We may never know for certain whether those petals were a gift from the living or an accident of nature.
And yet, more recent excavations at the very same cave have confirmed that the bodies there really were placed with care.
Again and again, in the same spot, across generations. Shanidar wasn't a one-time event. It was a place the dead were brought.
So the impulse is old.
Older than our species. But when our own ancestors took it up, they did something the Neanderthals never quite did. They made it extravagant. Travel forward to a place called Sunghir in Russia around 34,000 years ago. There, archaeologists uncovered a grave that stops you cold. 2 children, buried head to head. And covering their bodies, sewn into clothing that has long since rotted away, were beads. Thousands of them. Carved from mammoth ivory. When researchers counted, the number climbed past 10,000. Then they did the math. Each bead had to be carved by hand, with stone tools, one at a time. The labor behind a single child's burial may have taken thousands of hours. Thousands! For two children who could no longer hunt, gather, or contribute anything at all. Sit with that for a moment. A community in the Ice Age where every hour of daylight was a fight to survive chose to spend months of work decorating the bodies of children for the ground. That is not survival. That is something else entirely. That is meaning. Those beads are one of the oldest pieces of evidence we have that humans believed a person was worth more than their usefulness, even after death. Maybe especially after death. But why? Why dig the grave at all? Why the ochre, the beads, the flowers, real or not? The honest answer is that burial is the fossil of an idea. You can't dig up a thought, but you can dig up what a thought made people do. And a grave is what the idea of after looks like when it is pressed into the earth. To bury someone with their tools, their jewelry, their food, you have to believe on some level that the journey isn't over. That there is a somewhere else. The first graves may be the first physical proof that human beings could imagine a world beyond the one in front of their eyes. And it wasn't only humans they buried. In Israel, at a site belonging to a people we call the Natufians, archaeologists found a grave around 12,000 years old. Inside it, an elderly human, hand resting gently on the body of a puppy. Not eaten, not discarded. Buried together with what looks unmistakably like affection. One of the oldest signs that we didn't just grieve each other. We grieved the ones we loved, whatever they were. Of course, burial was never the only way. Across the world and across time, humans have done almost everything imaginable with their dead. Some left them on high platforms for the sky and the birds. Some kept the bones of their ancestors in their homes. Some cleaned and reburied the dead a second time, years later, in a ritual of remembering. The specific customs are endlessly different. But underneath all of them is the same astonishing fact. Every human culture ever discovered on every continent does something with its dead. There has never been a society that simply leaves them where they fall. Not one. That is the real answer to what ancient humans did when someone died. They invented the funeral. And in doing so, they invented something far larger. Because to bury a body with care, you must first understand a terrible thing. You must know that one day, this will be you. The grave you dig for someone you love is also a mirror. It is the moment a creature looks at death and, instead of running, sits down beside it and says, "You mattered, and I will not let you simply vanish." So the next time you picture that room, the flowers, the words, the hole in the ground, remember what it really is. It is not just grief. It is the end of a 100,000-year story. Written by every hand that ever carved a bead, dug a pit, or laid a flower for the dead, real or imagined. Long before we built cities or wrote a single word, we built graves. We were burying our dead before we were fully human. And maybe that was the moment we started to become it.